Hi everyone. So for today, let's have another lecture discussion. Let's discuss about Sikolohiyang Pilipino, okay, o Filipino psychology or PhilPsych. All right, this refers to the psychology born out of the experience, thought, and orientation of the Filipinos based on the full use of the Filipino culture and language. Basically po, with this po in hand, we're trying to see in the lens of our own culture as Filipinos. Okay, kasi po hindi naman po sa lahat ng mga chances, no? Our behavior as Filipinos can be tested, okay, or can be described by the Western lenses. So we have this PhilPsych for us to understand, okay, using our own native language and our own native lens. Ito po yung goal niya, indigenization from within. Okay, so Enriquez is our father of psychology. He defines Filipino psychology as the study of diwa or the psyche, in which it refers to the wealth of ideas referred by the philosophical concept essence and an entire range of psychological concepts from awareness to motives to behavior. So si Virgilio Enriquez, siya po yung father of Filipino psych. Okay, diwa is the Tagalog term for psyche. Okay, o pag-iisip. Ayun. So, again, Filipino psychology, this refers to indigenization from within. So, we base our own, okay, gamit po natin ang sarili na nating kultura. We use the culture of our native ancestors and the language in basing and making an assessment. Okay? So, yun, historical and socio-cultural realities. Okay, so it also helps in understanding the local language. Ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng kapwa? What is the meaning of diwa? Okay, so may mga terms tayo. Importante po yung mga kapwa, yung mga diwa, yung mga saya. Ano pa ba yung iba? Meron tayong saya, ligaya, 'di ba? Yung iba't ibang terms. It also unravels the Filipino characteristics. So Filipino psychology also focuses on the personality characteristics and traits of us Filipinos. Okay? So explaining them through the eyes of the native Filipino, kaya tayo merong PhilPsych. Kasi hindi sa lahat ng chances kayang i-explain ng nila Freud, nila Adler, yung personality nating mga Pinoy. Kaya siya na nagawa. Okay? So moving forward, again, this refers more on the indigenization from within. Alright, Filipino psych. These are some of the concepts and topics. Very important. Ayun, so Sikolohiyang Pilipino, foster national identity and consciousness. Okay, also it fosters social involvement and psychology of language and culture. Okay, so Sikolohiyang Pilipino is also it uses proper applications to health, agriculture, art, mass media, religion, and other spheres of people's daily life. So, pang-araw-araw din po siya sa lahat po ng aspeto natin bilang Filipino. So, let's talk about Virgilio Gaspar Enriquez. Siya po yung father of Filipino psych. So, ito po yung some information about Enriquez. We can see here, nag-aral po siya sa UP. Nagturo siya sa UP. Okay, so ito po yung information about him. Okay, let's go to the basic elements and features of Sikolohiyang Pilipino. Sikolohiya sa Pilipinas, Psychology in the Philippines, is the general form of psychology in the Philippines. Okay, ito po yun. Sikolohiya ng mga Pilipino, ito naman po, Psychology of the Filipinos. Okay, this refers to theorizing about the psychological nature of the Filipinos, whether from a local or a foreign perspective. So, dapat po alam po natin yung meaning ng Sikolohiya sa Pilipinas, Psychology in the Philippines, and Sikolohiya ng mga Pilipino, Psychology of the Filipinos. Okay. Alright, so this refers to the study of emotions and experience, knowledge, kalooban, and kamalayan, awareness of one's surroundings o ulirat, information and understanding, isip, habits and behaviors, this is another term or another meaning of diwa, and the soul, which is kaluluwa, which is the way to learning the people's conscience. Alright, so this in here po we have discussed a lot of Filipino terms which is applicable po siya sa PhilPsych. Ayun, so also po with this theory, we'd have the superstitious beliefs o yung mga pamahiin. Importante po na alam natin to, yung mga bawal, okay, yung dapat hindi. Ito po yung mga kasabihan ng mga matatanda na na-apply po sa culture natin and part na po to ng ating kamalayan. Okay? Some of the example, bawal maggupit ng kuko paggabi, bawal magwalis sa gabi, bawal magligpit ng pinggan pag may kumakain pa, bawal magregalo ng wallet nang walang lamang pera. So ito po yung mga example. Ito rin, bawal magwalis kasi daw winawalisan mo ang grasya, sabi ni Lola. Sweeping the floor at night. Also, meron tayong pamahiin na turn your plate when someone leaves in the middle of a meal. Okay. Hindi ko alam yun Meron din tayong pamahiin na reassure your host that you're human. So, tao po, 'di ba? Parang ganoon. Tao po. So, yun po. That is very applicable to our culture when we are trying to knock the door. Another thing is respect the elemental. So, meron tayong mga tabi-tabi po. So, sa atin din nanggaling yon para hindi tayo makulam o kung ano man, 'di ba? May mga terms din dito na barang, kulam. So, yun, under din siya sa Filipino psychology. So, importante po na alam ninyo yung pagkakaiba ng mga terms na yun, yung mga ligaya, saya, ano ba yung internal doon, yung saya, tsaka yung ligaya. You should know the differences. So, ayun. Here is an example, sabi ni Lola, sinigang, give me please. So, bakit kumakanta ka habang nagluluto? Gusto mo bang tumanda mag-isa? So, yung mga kasabihan po ng mga oldies po, yung mga native po, is talagang na-apply siya sa Filipino psych. Ayun. So, ito po yung mga example ng mga pamahiin natin. Okay. Ayun. Slang. Naman totoo yun di ba? Yeah, please. So, ang dami pong situations na pwede nating ma-apply ang ating kultura. So, punta tayo sa Filipino traits. Unahin natin yung positive Filipino traits nating mga Filipino. So, first is, ito po. You know, you're a Filipino kapag yung sa fiesta, di ba? So, marami tayong ini-invite kapag fiesta. Nagpapakain, merong party, ganun po. Tsaka yung mano po, isa din po to sa ating culture, no? Mano po sa mga matatanda. Yung mga bata kailangang magmano as a sign of respect. Isa rin po yung manyana habit, ito po yung parang bayanihan. So, yung tulong-tulungan tayo, kapag merong kailangang tulungan, helping each other. Okay? Ito naman po yung pagiging hardworking natin, no? Ito po yung importansya sa family. It's very important for us Filipinos yung ating mga pamilya. And now, let's go to the negative Filipino traits. So, kung merong positive, meron din po tayong mga negative na mga Filipino traits. First is yung manyana habit o yung crab mentality. So, yung hinihila natin yung ibang tao para po umangat tayo. There's also colonial mentality. So, ito po yung we are always accepting foreign culture or tanggap lang tayo ng tanggap, o yung ating pag-iisip is nagiging nagiging foreign na, 'di ba? So hindi na natin, we are trying to forget na we are also Filipinos. Meron din tayong bahala na attitude. So yung term na bahala na si Batman, bahala na bukas. Also, yung manyana habit, yung mamaya na o bukas na lang, ayoko muna ngayon, ganun yun. Meron din tayong linggas kugon. So yung hindi mo, yung parang iniiwan mo yung work mo, leaving our work either half-baked or unfinished. So hindi nyo tinatapos yung trabaho. Minsan naman procrastination. Okay? Ito po yung mga negative Filipino traits na common, okay, o present sa ating culture. So ayun lang po, those are the basics that we need to understand about Filipino psychology. So importante po na alam natin yung mga words, yung mga terms that are being used, yung mga Filipino words gaya po ng kulam, barang, ligaya, saya, as I try to remember, may mga words po na talagang lumalabas sa board exam na ano bang ibig sabihin? Ano ba yung internal or yung external meaning? May mga ganun po. So try to be familiar and be acquainted with those words. And yun po. Ito po yung first part natin for our Filipino Psych. I hope you've learned something, the fundamentals. And thank you so much for listening.
Jesus Salazar, a Filipino historian and anthropologist, psychologist, and a leading proponent of Pantayong Pananaw. He is best known as Ama ng Histograpiyang Pilipino and Ama ng Pantayong Pananaw. He was one of the founders of the following organizations. Salazar's greatest contribution to social sciences in the Philippines was the definition of history and Pantayong Pananaw. According to Salazar, the history of a specific community or nation should be construed primarily on the basis of the internal flow of its history. If history is a written record, the root word for kasaysayan is saysay, having two meanings, a narrative and sense or meaning. Kasaysayan is therefore salaysay na may saysay or meaningful narrative. Since the 1970s, Salazar had developed an idea he called Pantayong Pananaw, a self-reflective view in the study of the Philippine history. From us for us perspective, a communication-based framework whose aim is to produce a national discourse, talastasang bayan. The Pantayong Pananaw is from the word tayo. In other words, these are stories and history of Filipino, which are spoken by Filipinos for Filipino. The storytelling should be in the language that most Filipino understand, the Filipino language. Recently, the Pantayong Pananaw has been used to successfully explain and write about the inarticulate sectors and section of the Filipino society. It is found to be useful in women's studies, particularly in writing about the silent contributions and impact of the women in social, economic, political, and historical development of the country.